The monastery sits in a fold of green hills, where a river bends and slows before continuing its journey to the sea. It has been here for 300 years, its stone walls the color of honey in the afternoon light, its bell tower rising above the oaks that shelter its western side. Smoke drifts from the kitchen chimney, thin and pale against the gray autumn sky, carrying with it the smell of baking bread. From a distance, the monastery appears almost to have grown from the earth itself. So naturally does it rest against the hillside. The fields around it lie in neat strips, some golden with the stubble of harvested wheat, others dark and freshly turned. An orchard follows the curve of the river, its apple trees heavy with fruit. Everything here speaks of order, of patience, of work done slowly and done well. This is a Benedictine house, one of hundreds scattered across medieval Europe, and the men who live within its walls have given their lives to a single purpose: the praise of God through prayer, through work, and through the keeping of an ancient rhythm that shapes every hour of every day. The day begins in darkness. Long before the sun rises, long before the birds stir in the hedgerows, the monastery bell breaks the silence of the night. It is 2 o'clock in the morning, and the bell calls the monks to matins, the first of the 8 daily services that structure their lives. In the dormitory, the monks rise from their narrow beds. They have slept in their habits, the long black robes that mark them as followers of Saint Benedict, and so there is little to do but slip their feet into sandals and make their way down the night stairs to the church. No candles are lit in the dormitory. The monks know the way by memory, by the feel of worn stone beneath their feet, by the faint glow of starlight through the high windows. The church is cold at this hour, and dark except for the candles burning on the altar and in the choir stalls. The monks take their places in the wooden seats that line either side of the chancel, facing one another across the nave. And then, in voices still rough with sleep, they begin to sing. The psalms rise and fall in the darkness, one side of the choir answering the other in the ancient patterns of plain chant. The Latin words have been sung in the same way for centuries in monasteries across Christendom, a continuous thread of praise stretching back through generations beyond counting. The monks do not need books to remember the words. They have sung these psalms so many times that the phrases live in their bones. Matins last for perhaps an hour, sometimes longer on feast days when additional readings are added. When it ends, the monks do not return to bed. Instead, they remain in the church for private prayer and meditation, or they drift to the chapter house to read by candlelight until the bell calls them again. At dawn, the bell rings for lauds, the morning office. The sky outside the church windows has begun to lighten, shifting from black to deep blue to the first pale hints of gold. As the monks sing the morning psalms, the candles on the altar seem to grow dimmer, no longer needed as the natural light creeps slowly into the church. After lauds comes a period of reading and prayer in the cloister, that covered walkway that forms the heart of monastic life. The cloister is built around a square garden open to the sky, where herbs grow in neat beds and a fountain murmurs softly at the center. The monks walk slowly along the covered passages, their books held close, their lips moving silently as they read. The light grows stronger. Birds begin to sing in the orchard beyond the walls. The smell of bread baking in the kitchen drifts through the morning air. One by one, the monastery comes to life. The clatter of pots from the kitchen, the creak of the well rope as water is drawn, the distant sound of sheep in the far pastures. At about 6 o'clock, the bell rings for prime, the first of the little hours. This service is shorter than matins or lauds, a brief pause for prayer before the work of the day begins. The monks gather once more in the church, sing the appointed psalms and prayers, and then disperse to their morning tasks. For most of the monks, the morning hours after prime are devoted to work. The rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century and still followed in every detail, declares that idleness is the enemy of the soul. And so the monks work, not in frantic haste, but steadily, patiently, each man attending to his appointed task. Some work in the gardens, tending the vegetables and herbs that will feed the community and stock the infirmary. The monastery grows cabbages and onions, leeks and beans, parsley and sage and rosemary. In the physic garden, the more delicate medicinal plants receive special care. Feverfew for headaches, chamomile for troubled sleep, comfrey for wounds and broken bones. The gardeners work in silence, as is the custom during the morning hours. They communicate when necessary through simple hand signs, a vocabulary of gestures developed over centuries to preserve the peace of the monastery while still allowing the practical needs of daily life to be met. In the scriptorium, another kind of work unfolds. This large room on the upper floor of the East Range catches the best light, its tall windows facing north to provide steady illumination without the glare of direct sun. Here the monks who have been trained in the art of writing spend their mornings copying manuscripts. The work is painstaking. Each letter must be formed with care, each line perfectly straight, each page a work of art as well as a record of knowledge. The scribes sit at slanted desks, their vellum sheets stretched before them, their quills cut fresh each morning from goose feathers. The ink is made from oak galls and iron, mixed according to recipes passed down through generations. A single page might take an entire day to complete. A complete Bible, the most ambitious project a scriptorium could undertake, might occupy a team of scribes for 2 years or more. But the monks do not measure their work in terms of speed. What matters is that the work is done well, that the words are preserved faithfully, that the books they create will endure. The tools of the scribe's trade lie arranged on each desk with careful precision. There are the quills, of course, trimmed to a fine point with a small knife kept sharp for the purpose. There is the inkhorn, a small container that holds just enough ink for a few hours of work. There is the pumice stone for smoothing rough patches on the vellum, and the ruler for keeping lines straight, and the awl for pricking tiny holes to guide the ruling. Most precious of all is the exemplar, the book being copied, often borrowed from another monastery, and handled with the utmost reverence. The exemplar sits on a stand beside the scribe's desk, held open by small weights, its pages turned only with clean hands. The scriptorium is silent, except for the scratch of quills on vellum and the occasional soft murmur of a scribe reading a passage aloud to fix it in memory. The monks do not chat as they work. The rule of silence preserves concentration and turns even this labor into a form of prayer. At 9 o'clock, the bell calls the community to terce, another of the little hours. The monks set down their tools, leave their gardens and their desks, and make their way once more to the church. The service is brief, 15 minutes perhaps, but it serves to punctuate the morning, to remind each monk that whatever task he performs, his true work is the worship of God. After terce, the work resumes. The morning hours are considered the most valuable for concentrated labor, when the mind is fresh and the light is good. In the scriptorium, the scribes return to their copying, In the gardens, the weeding and watering continue. In the workshop, a carpenter repairs a chair. In the brewery, the brewmaster checks his fermenting vats. Elsewhere in the monastery, the prior meets with the cellarer to discuss supplies. The guest master prepares a room for a traveler expected later in the day. The novice master gathers the young men who have recently joined the community for instruction in the rule and the customs of the house. By late morning, the smell of cooking fills the monastery. The kitchen, a large building set slightly apart from the main range to reduce the risk of fire, has been busy since before dawn. The cook and his assistants have baked bread, prepared vegetables, and begun the slow simmering of the day's main dish. The monks eat simply. Meat is forbidden by the rule, except for the sick, and so the kitchen relies on fish, eggs, cheese, and vegetables. Today, there is a thick pottage of beans and onions, flavored with herbs from the garden. There is fresh bread, still warm from the oven. There is cheese made from the milk of the monastery's own cows, and apples from the orchard, and small beer brewed on the premises. The meals are not lavish, but they are wholesome and sufficient. No monk goes hungry. The rule instructs that a pound of bread should be provided for each monk each day, along with 2 cooked dishes and whatever fruit or vegetables the season provides. It is plain fare, but it sustains the body for the work of prayer. At noon, the bell rings for sext, and then again for the midday meal. The monks gather in the refectory, a long hall with wooden tables arranged in rows. At one end, raised slightly on a platform, sits the abbot's table, where the head of the community takes his meals with the prior and any honored guests. Before they eat, the monks stand in silence as the reader for the week takes his place at a lectern. Throughout the meal, he will read aloud from Scripture or from the lives of the saints, his voice steady and clear in the quiet room. The monks do not speak during meals. They listen to the reading and eat in contemplative silence. The food is served by monks assigned to kitchen duty for the week, who move along the tables with serving dishes and pitchers of small beer. Each monk takes what he needs, neither too much nor too little. The rule cautions against both gluttony and excessive fasting, teaching instead a moderate middle way. After the meal comes a period of rest. The monks return to the dormitory or find quiet corners in the cloister where they may sit in meditation or simply close their eyes against the brightness of the early afternoon. This rest period is written into the rule, an acknowledgement that even monks need time for the body to recover from the early rising and the morning's work. The monastery falls quiet. In the church, a single candle burns before the altar. In the cloister garden, bees move among the lavender. The fountain continues its soft murmuring, the only sound in the drowsy afternoon stillness. Some monks read during this time, propped against the sun-warmed stone of the cloister arcade. Others walk slowly in the garden, their hands clasped behind their backs, their thoughts turned inward. A few, especially the older brothers, allow themselves the simple pleasure of sleep. At 2:00, the bell calls the community to none, and the afternoon work period begins. The tasks are much the same as in the morning: copying, gardening, maintenance, the countless small jobs that keep a community of 50 or 60 men fed and housed and clothed. But the afternoon has a different quality than the morning. The urgency, such as it was, has faded. The monks move more slowly now, their work steadier and more meditative. In the scriptorium, the light has shifted, coming now from a different angle, warmer and more golden as the sun descends toward the western hills. The novices, those young men still in their first years of monastic life, spend part of the afternoon in instruction. They gather in the chapter house with the novice master, an older monk chosen for his patience and wisdom, and they learn the customs of the community, not just the rule, but the hundreds of small traditions that have grown up around it over the centuries. In the infirmary, a separate building with its own garden and kitchen, the infirmarian tends to the sick and elderly. Monastic life is not easy on the body. The early rising, the fasting, the hours of standing or kneeling in the cold church. And most monks who live to old age spend their final years in the infirmary's care. The infirmary is a gentler place than the main monastery. The rules are relaxed here. The sick may eat meat to rebuild their strength. They are excused from the night offices if they are too weak to attend. The infirmarian, trained in the medicine of the day, prepares remedies from the herbs of the physic garden and offers what comfort he can. The room is warm, heated by a fire that burns throughout the day and night. The beds are softer than those in the dormitory, the blankets thicker. Windows look out over the herb garden, where the medicinal plants grow in orderly rows, each bed labeled with the ailments its contents are meant to treat. As the afternoon wears on, the light begins to change. Shadows lengthen across the cloister garden. The hills to the west turn golden, then amber, then deep rose as the sun sinks toward the horizon. The air grows cooler, carrying the first hints of the evening damp. At 5 o'clock, the bell rings for vespers, the evening office. This is one of the most beautiful services of the day, when the church fills with the warm light of the setting sun and the monks' voices rise in the ancient hymns of praise. The psalms sung at vespers are among the most beloved, songs of thanksgiving and trust, of rest at the end of labor. The candles are lit one by one as the daylight fades. The church that was bright with color at lauds now glows with a softer, warmer light. The stained glass windows, so vivid in the morning, have become dark shapes against the deepening sky, their stories hidden until another dawn. After vespers comes the evening meal, lighter than the midday dinner. In summer, when the days are long and the work is hard, this might be a substantial supper. But in autumn and winter, it is often just bread and cheese, or perhaps a bowl of soup, taken in the same silence as the earlier meal. The reading continues throughout supper, the reader's voice steady and unhurried in the candlelit hall. The monks eat slowly, listening to the words, letting the rhythm of the reading settle into their minds alongside the plain comfort of the food. When the meal is finished, there is a brief period of recreation. This is the one time of day when the monks may speak freely with one another, when the silence gives way to quiet conversation. They gather in the warming room, the only heated space besides the kitchen and infirmary, and they talk of the day's work, of the reading at supper, of memories from their lives before they took the vow. The recreation period is brief, perhaps half an hour, before the bell calls the community to Compline, the last office of the day. This service is the most intimate of all, a quiet closing of the day's cycle, a commending of the soul to God's keeping through the hours of darkness. The monks file into the church one last time. The building is dark now except for the candles, and there is a hush that feels different from the silences of the day. This is the silence of ending, of rest, of laying down the burdens of waking life. The prayers of Compline are prayers of protection and trust. The monks ask God to guard them through the night, to keep them safe from harm, to grant them peaceful sleep. They sing the Salve Regina, the ancient hymn to the Virgin Mary, their voices soft in the candlelit darkness. And then, one by one, the candles are extinguished. In the great silence that follows Compline, the monks make their way to the dormitory. No words are spoken now, and none will be spoken until after lauds the following morning. This is the silence that holds the community together through the night, a shared quiet that binds each monk to his brothers even as they sleep. The dormitory is cold, but the monks are accustomed to it. They slip off their sandals and lie down on their narrow beds, drawing the wool blankets up to their chins. Some fall asleep almost at once, exhausted by the long day. Others lie awake for a time, their minds still turning over the readings and prayers of the hours just past. Outside, the autumn night settles over the monastery. An owl calls from the oak trees beyond the wall. The river murmurs in its bed. The stars wheel slowly overhead, as they have wheeled for centuries, marking time for communities of monks who have kept this same rhythm through all the ages of the world. And yet the night is not entirely given to sleep. At 2 o'clock, the bell will ring again, calling the monks from their beds to begin the cycle anew with matins. This is the rhythm that has shaped monastic life for more than 1,000 years, a rhythm of prayer and work, of silence and song, of waking and sleeping that turns like a great wheel through all the days and seasons. For the monks, there is comfort in this repetition. Each day is different in its details. The weather changes, the work varies, the readings rotate through their yearly cycle, but the underlying pattern remains the same. There is no wondering what to do next, no anxiety about choices unmade. The rule provides for everything, and the bell marks every hour. This is not a life of excitement or adventure. There are no great events, no dramatic turning points. There is only the steady accumulation of days, each one offered to God in the same spirit of humble service, each one dissolving into the next like ripples spreading across still water. The seasons turn, and the monastery turns with them. In spring, the gardens burst into life, and the monks spend long hours planting and tending the crops that will sustain them through the year. The days grow longer, and the period between Compline and matins stretches, allowing more time for rest. Summer brings the hardest work, the harvesting of grain, the making of hay, the gathering of fruit from the orchards. The monks rise even earlier in these months to take advantage of the cool morning hours, and they work later into the evening when the sun is slow to set. Autumn is the time of completion. The harvest is brought in, the apples pressed for cider, the herbs dried and stored for winter. There is a satisfaction in watching the storerooms fill, in knowing that the community will be provided for through the cold months ahead. Winter closes in, dark and cold. The days shrink to a few brief hours of gray light, and the monks spend more time in prayer and reading than in outdoor work. The church is frigid during the night offices, and the monks' breath clouds in the candlelight as they sing. But there is beauty even in winter. The first snow transforms the cloister garden into a world of white, each herb bed mounded softly, each branch of the fruit trees outlined in frost. The fire in the warming room crackles and glows, and the monks gather close around it during recreation, grateful for its heat. And then, slowly, imperceptibly, the days begin to lengthen again. The first green shoots appear in the garden. The birds return to the hedgerows. The great wheel turns, and the cycle begins anew, as it has begun for century upon century, in monasteries throughout Christendom. The monks who live this life do not think of themselves as extraordinary. They are ordinary men who have chosen an extraordinary commitment to give their entire lives to a single purpose, to a rhythm of prayer and work that will continue until they die and be taken up by the brothers who come after them. Some came to the monastery as children, given by their families to be raised in the religious life. Others came as adults, seeking refuge from a world that had wounded them or simply failed to satisfy. A few came late in life, old men looking for a quiet place to prepare for death. Their reasons for coming were as varied as the men themselves, but whatever brought them here, they have found something that holds them, a peace that comes from surrender, a purpose that comes from repetition, a belonging that comes from praying the same prayers alongside the same brothers, year after year, until the prayers become as natural as breathing. In the library, the books accumulate over centuries. Each generation of monks adds to the collection, copies made in the scriptorium, gifts from benefactors, purchases from traveling booksellers. The shelves hold works of theology and philosophy, lives of the saints, treatises on agriculture and medicine, copies of ancient texts preserved nowhere else in the world. The library is the memory of the monastery, and in a larger sense, the memory of civilization itself. When the Roman Empire fell, and the barbarian kingdoms rose and fell in their turn, it was in monasteries like this one that the learning of the ancient world was preserved. Monks copied the works of Virgil and Cicero, of Aristotle and Plato, keeping them safe through centuries of warfare and upheaval. This is the quiet heroism of monastic life, not the heroism of battle or adventure, but the heroism of patience, of faithful repetition, of doing the same small things day after day for the sake of something larger than oneself. The bell tower rises above all the other buildings of the monastery, and it is from here that the bells send their voice out across the countryside. The bells have names: Mary, John, Peter, and the monks who ring them know their voices as well as they know the voices of their brothers. The largest bell, Mary, weighs nearly a ton. It takes 2 monks to set her swinging, pulling together on the rope in a rhythm as ancient and regular as the prayers themselves. When she rings, her voice can be heard for miles, rolling out over the fields and villages, calling the faithful to prayer. For the people who live near the monastery, the bells are the markers of their day. They wake to the sound of lauds, eat their midday meal as the bell rings for sext, prepare for bed when Compline sounds across the darkening fields. The monastery and its rhythms shape the life of the whole region, a steady heartbeat at the center of the rural world. And so the days pass, one much like another, the pattern repeating with only small variations through all the weeks and months and years. A monk might live 50 years in the same monastery, walking the same cloister, praying in the same church, sleeping in the same dormitory, and at the end feel that he has barely begun to plumb the depths of this simple life. For there is depth here, beneath the surface of repetition. The psalms that the monks sing 8 times a day are not the same psalms each time. They change meaning as the monk himself changes, revealing new layers as the years accumulate. The silence is not empty, but full, rich with the presence of God and the communion of brothers who share it. The work, too, has its depths. The scribe who copies the same texts year after year comes to know them as no casual reader ever could. The gardener who tends the same beds through decades of seasons develops an intimacy with the soil and the plants that transcends mere knowledge. The life is simple, but it is not shallow. In the evening of his life, A monk may look back on all the years he has spent within these walls and find it difficult to distinguish one year from another. There were winters and summers, times of sickness and times of health, brothers who came and brothers who died. But through it all, the rhythm continued. The bells, the prayers, the work, the silence. This is not a failure of memory, but a success of purpose. The monk has not been trying to accumulate experiences or achievements. He has been trying to empty himself, to become a vessel for prayer, to lose himself in something greater than his individual life. And in this, year by year, he has succeeded. The monastery will continue after he is gone. Younger brothers will take his place in the choir, at the desk in the scriptorium, in the garden where he spent so many quiet hours. The pattern will persist, the prayers will rise, the bells will ring out across the same hills and fields they have marked for 300 years. Outside the walls, the world continues in all its noise and turbulence. Kings rise and fall, wars are fought and forgotten, cities burn and are rebuilt. But here, in this fold of green hills where the river bends and slows, the rhythm goes on unchanged. Matins and lauds, prime and terce, sext and none, vespers and compline. The bell will ring at 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, as it rang this morning, as it has rung every morning for 3 centuries. The monks will rise in the darkness and make their way to the cold church, and their voices will join in the same ancient songs of praise. The candles will be lit, and the psalms will be sung, and when dawn breaks over the eastern hills, the cycle will continue. This is the life of the monastery, not a story with a beginning and an end, but a wheel that turns without ceasing, a prayer that never stops rising, a rhythm that carries the monks through their days and their years and delivers them, at last, into the great silence from which all prayer begins.